If everybody's ready, we'll call the meeting to order,
We're recording.
and we are recording. Hi, everybody. Nice to see you.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Hi.
We're sitting here feeding our faces.
We miss you.
So
Come here.
let's see, who do we have on just?
Dave.
Zach or Jen, do we have a straw?
Yes. Okay, so everybody's got their minutes for the agenda. Call to order, public comments, no public. No public. I just want to know, does anybody have any changes to the agenda or additions? That's allowed. You're allowed to change, Bill. Okay, the strategic planning update. Last week, and thank you to Chad, I have to give him kudos for this one. He, on the way out, or at some point in time, he was worried about our use of the word free access to media production. And finally, my brain kicked in, and I said, yep, we shouldn't use the word free because we don't plan on having everything free. And I thought maybe somebody could call us to task on that. And if you'll remember, it's on the bottom of your agenda, but it's ORCA Media strengthens participation in local communities and government by providing free access to media production, training, and distribution. And I would like to discuss it and also recommend that we just delete the word free with kudos to Chad.
I think we're trying to say open access to everybody. And the word free means that also. So we have two uses of the word free.
Oh, see, I took it as free as in not costing anything.
Well, that's the danger.
Yeah.
Also to our budget.
I like the word open. Could we use that instead of free, do you think?
I think we could. That's what I think we're trying to say with using the word free.
Okay, because I didn't take it that way when we were talking about it. And on the way home, I'm going, oh, that's bad.
Yeah.
So what did we just say?
Open access to media.
Okay, so is there any comments about my blabbing away here about this? If it's okay, maybe somebody could make a motion that we.
I would like to add accountability.
Accountability.
Mainly because.
Where would you see accountability?
So one thing we found when ORCA started to video goings on in select boards and in the State House is that people behaved better. And
when they're being recorded.
Yes, there's nothing like a little daylight to make people be a little careful.
I think instead of accountability is responsibility for me, because responsibility versus accountability is that it's imposed versus responsibility is something that comes from the heart.
Well, how would that word fit in to the sentence? I don't.
Is this for the mission statement, or is this maybe something that can go into like a value statement?
Yeah, because I don't see that necessarily fitting in with the. Let me put my glasses on.
I would say strengthens participation in and accountability of local communities and government by providing open access to media production, training, and distribution.
I feel like that might be too much responsibility or put on to us, because we're just there to record and we don't make any moves that they should be doing this, that, and the other, whereas accountability might hold us as we're that watchdog, but we're not the watchdog. We're just shining a light on what's happening, but without any position.
I would think maybe as Chad just said, another statement of what were you referring to, Chad, when you said, sorry, it was a mouthful.
I don't know if it would be values or, but yeah, I think that's an excellent point. Yeah.
Right.
It makes it sound like a journalistic institution.
Right. Like we're telling them what to do and not to do.
You're right.
Political.
We don't want to sound too much like democracy dies in darkness.
Okay, so would somebody want to make a motion to exchange open for free or free for open?
So moved.
Oh, so moved. Thank you very much, CJ.
I second it.
Second it, thank you. Any comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so we have ORCA Media strengthens participation in local communities and government by providing open access to media production, training, and distribution. Thank you very much for that, Dave. That's great. I like it. Okay, next on the agenda is the circles update. And Zach, you want to start us off?
Sure. We did our first site visit at Media Factory, and we had, oh, how long were we there for? A couple hours.
Yeah, quite a
actually,
while.
Quite a while.
Once we found it.
Once we found it.
Yeah.
And then we kind of wrote out some notes of some of our thought processes from that one. That's in the packet there. Yeah, so we have our kind of general takeaways. It was kind of interesting because they're quite a bit bigger than us in different ways. So, and it was neat seeing how they kind of organize things and the workflow. And then we tried getting some ideas from them. So it was nice. And then our next visit is going to be Jam and White River
In January.
in January.
And what is their coverage down there, Jam? Is that,
Um,
are they the only ones down that area? In the big area?
Yeah, I haven't seen the map.
Oh,
Off
But
the
it's,
top.
because we have a big area, right, compared to
Yeah,
others?
and theirs, they were saying, they're like, oh, like our furthest one's like, our furthest town's like 20 minutes away. Ours is like an hour.
Wow, right. So, anybody, the one thing that we were talking about here was they needed some signage down there, because Chad and I we ran into each other by accident and helped each other find the place. I was out there for I don't know how long. And we were hoping to get some signage here, and I think we've had some good news, have we not?
The landlord's looking at getting unified signage
Yeah.
which would be nice to adapt to.
All right.
So did we want to go beyond the campus-wide signage that they're putting for the campus? Or was it just like we were hoping to get them going on a campus-wide signage and we would be a part of that?
Oh, I didn't think when we were talking that we would, encourage them to.
Well, I was gonna,
But as long as they're doing it, I say, let them do it. We'll see if we like it. And if we need a
Yeah.
little extra, we can wait, let them afford put the bill. I just wanted somebody some of them have, even though we send them direction, they have trouble finding us. It's not the easiest place to find, and the little things on the door, they can't see them from the street. So you don't know that you're here.
okay,
So I would let them do their thing, and then we'll see how it looks.
okay.
And we have signs inside too.
Yeah,
I don't know if that helps, but
yeah, we need some
This is-
nicer,
I mean, it's just a piece of paper, yeah.
yeah. But we have the ability to make decent signs here, don't we, with all the talent we have here? Just to put, even in paper to put up on the wall,
We have the,
Inside the offices or outside?
inside the
In the
office, when you
hallway?
come in the wall.
we have a laminator. What the hell?
That's close enough. Well, you
Is that
guys
what
know how
you
to do fancy things, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So does anybody have any comments about our tour to the Media Factory? It was really impressive. And they just went out of their way to be nice to us. They were really glad we
Yeah,
were there, I
yeah,
think.
it was really nice.
Yeah, it was great. We did thank them, I hope, at some
Yes,
point.
yeah, I wrote back
All
after.
right, great.
Mhm.
Okay, so moving
So,
along, is there any
sorry.
other circles? Young
Oh.
lady, you have anything?
I was gonna say, we did have, I think staff spoke about the reorganization of the space into the editing systems into one space. And it sounded like you were thinking like the bullpen that we used to have at City Center. And we thought that we were curious to know if the reason why we wanted to go back to how that was versus the edit suites that we had for community producers, and what the rationale of why we wanted to make that move or back. and we weren't sure. So
Yeah, I wasn't
Oh,
sure. When I was trying
because
to-
we-
What the
well,
idea is.
I think maybe-
Well, I think we talked about the way that a centralized space worked for us in terms of assisting people who are working there. Wanted it cleaner in terms of the desk
Yep.
space, like having this long desk space, and also for Zach and other people to help our the people who are visiting this space kind of, work around, for editing and other things. It just felt like it was more
Right.
streamlined versus going to different rooms and doing things.
Yeah.
That was us, but
Oh, because I think we were also thinking like with the suites as they are, it kind of gives them a little bit more, like community producers, if they're coming to work on a project, a little bit more like concentration space versus like having, I think that bullpen, if you were a community producer coming to work and work on your project, to have all these other distractions may not necessarily be helpful.
And
And
you can get a few people in those spaces.
because I think we have the dissection
Right
group
now.
doing that, and there's a couple people that work together in that room so they can talk, but then they're not necessarily affecting if we had someone else in edit too, and they didn't want to necessarily, but if they wanted to, I think we've had other times community producers come in and pipe into the other, if there's like a talking, they might come and be like,
Yeah.
hey, what's going on? So that's where I think we were thinking of like, if the community producers are coming in to use the space that they don't have, because we have resources that they wouldn't have at home, that they're like, okay, so this gives me an opportunity to do something on equipment that I don't have at home. And so if we think about like, what space would you have at home to do a project? And if, especially if they're concentrating, like we would want to try to give them something similar to that. And it could be that middle space, if you wanted a more communal space to kind of like, I guess, interact with, then maybe like we could think about redoing that space to try to still accommodate like that communal, like back and forth kind of.
yeah.
So
Right
that's why,
now, the edit suites are monopolizing the entire space of the office. And so we had asked Zach in our meeting, we said, how often are there multiple community producers here working at the same time? And what are the other rooms being used for? And what we were told was maybe one, and that the other rooms were being used for like encoding and doing other ORCA related things. So we said, well, possibly, what if we just had one dedicated ed suite? Now, maybe someone could reserve that, which is the thing that we learned at Media Factory, we do a lot of.
Right.
And then have the other ones
Right.
not taking up the entire space of the office. Because even in television stations, they
Yeah,
edit like
right.
this, and you have at each editing station headphones that you put on.
Right.
I guess
And we
our,
wanted to use that wall, where, you guys are right now, Zach and Josh, right, Josh? That
Sure.
whole wall and set it up in little cubicles. And that would be with the long table we talked about,
and would that be community producers or
Yeah.
edit, like ORCA editors?
whoever.
Yeah, whoever could use it, and then it also would lend itself to do like community teaching sessions where people would you have more space, so
Right.
you're sort of there and able to do like a
Right.
presentation and train new community producers or something like that.
Because we were thinking that middle space where that big table is, of having computers, like we wanted to, well, I wanted to,
You
we
don't
went
have
back,
the table,
like
yeah.
that table out, and if you had like mobile, like tables that you could move around, so you could have it up against the wall, or you can reconfigure that space to have it
That'd work.
so that you could do a group, like have it all. But I think the other bit is that we were hoping to have more community producers, like right now we have one, but we're trying to, like, that's
But
one where
one
we're
at a
trying to
time.
get more, so we
So
could
that's
have.
it.
I just think you should be in an office. You guys are co-directors, you shouldn't be sitting,
The only thing is,
It looks bad.
we have to collaborate a lot.
well, I didn't
So-
want her there anyway, I
Right,
wanted
right.
you to be back there.
So we do have to,
I think, talking from my experience, but it's very different as, working in a newsroom and, the way that the layout is always open because there's a synergy.
Yeah.
That doesn't apply here, but what you're saying, I think sounds perfectly
Yeah.
fine. But that idea of there's a space in which there's people who are working. If you want to be private, you have that private space, but if there's a group of people working in different stations, that
Right.
sparks conversation,
Yeah.
sparks idea, it sparks like push and competition and many other things. And I got that. When I worked at, I understood in newspaper, I had my private suite to edit. And I also had a desk at the front, and my desk, I spent most of my time at desk at the front
Was it-
because I would ask,
Because I think Josh isn't
reporters-
very visible where he is.
Yeah.
He's hiding behind the
right.
the computer and you can't see him.
And again, for me,
And
and
he
it's
doesn't look
different,
up much.
for me, what's different is I would ask reporters, so what are you working on now? I like that. And then I would
But were
start
those-
that
Were
conversation.
those news reporters?
News, it was a news, it was a
But
news,
not editors.
it was a newspaper.
Because I know my background is in news too, and the editing stations are actually enclosed rooms,
Yeah.
but the reporters would
Right.
have more of
Well, we
that.
had
Not
both.
anymore.
We had
More of an
both, we had,
office.
I had both.
Very
I
rare
had,
now.
I had a specific room for myself alone.
Yeah,
And then I had two desks and another desk, which was the editing with everybody else.
Well-
And, my editor-in-chief, the person who was, said, you should spend more time out here because this is where you're gonna get your input and ideas to create stories.
Well,
And
Joe,
she
you
was
want
right.
to talk about
Well, wait.
the two people that you identified?
But
For
wait,
coming
before we
here
go
to-
there, what changed? I mean, just to try to, you said not anymore. What changed and why?
Well, that's above my pay grade. I don't know. I think
Don't know
people
why.
liked, the collaboration idea, more open workspaces came into favor and, it's not common, especially in like a newsroom sort of thing.
Everything's open spaces. right?
Unless you're like, if you're doing finishing work, and I'm like in
Right,
high-end
right.
film stuff, you'll
Right,
have
right.
like your
But you
dedicated.
have your
Well,
dedicated, absolutely.
Chad found the names of two people. We were talking about bringing somebody in to take a look at the workspace and give us some ideas.
Right.
And one of the people that he found, and thank you for doing that,
Yeah.
is somebody I know very well. She's Tanya, she's head of the United Way. And I've known her for a bazillion years. And she apparently has done, getting into this sort of spatial, what is the word?
Well, they just did a presentation, yeah, they did a
Feng shui.
presentation.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I'm sure.
Workplace design for, I forget what exactly it is, but it was recommended to me by several people.
Yeah, and I'm sure
it's
Tanya-
For good environments to work in, I think
Right.
it's the focus of their.
So I've offered to contact her and I'm gonna, the carrot will be to come on my show and do a big show about United Way. And maybe that will get her here and then she can give us some ideas about the studio.
Yeah.
And then we can really, because we really need to decide what we
I
want to
think,
do.
Sure,
I
so
think
the-
I think Zach and Jen are in a position to talk about experiencing this and that, because they've been in both,
Right,
right?
yeah,
We're
I don't
just
mind the
proposing,
idea about
like,
the main.
my
the center.
ideal, like, for me, like, when I see open plan, like, it's open space, computers, I see that, clean, spaces streamlined
Yeah.
at the edges, I see that, but Zach and Jen can talk about,
It just.
they've experienced both, like, the openness of downtown versus being up here,
Right.
just separated.
And I don't mind that, I think that's a good idea about I always thought you needed that big table for something, but if you don't, maybe we can move things around, and I would like, Sean, am I saying it right?
Sean.
Sean to be somewhere where people can see him. They
I know,
can't,
it's such a weird space.
they can't, well, I thought we were gonna put him, almost like where the couch is, where that desk is somehow, but it may be too small for him, but he's gotta be a place where he can see people come in and say, hi, how are you? Can I help you? And that doesn't happen.
Well, yeah, if
Yeah.
the desk is gone, then the couch could go over and there could be like
Right.
that little hangout talking area that they had at Media Factory, maybe in
Yeah,
that
in that
space,
space, right.
and put him where the couch is.
Huh?
Should we talk about our current idea? Is
Oh,
now
well,
The time to do.
So I guess we also, like, we talked about what kind of budget is are we thinking about the redesign or like the interior design, like when, you look at an interior designer, you always think, okay, like that's gonna be a lot of money. And we looked at some of the pictures for the ones that you sent and it looked expensive. So we're like,
Great,
okay,
yeah.
so what kind of budget?
Spending much money.
Yeah.
are we talking about, because there are definitely, if we're thinking some higher end, or if we're thinking more money than just our equipment budget,
Yeah,
we talked about, like, we would like to kind of work on the studio to maybe make it a little bit quieter,
right.
and maybe have, like, for staff to have that kitchen kind of separate out, so
Yeah.
that they could actually go in and get their lunch while a
People
show
are
is
here.
happening.
Oh, good. All right,
So,
well, let me get Tanya to come in, give us some ideas. If we can get some stuff on paper, then we can have a good discussion about, maybe you guys can put on paper what you would like to see, and then we'll talk about it.
Yeah, I think that we've set the sign as our short-term goal that we want to get done immediately. We want to get something done for the sign that was low-hanging fruit. And then once figure out some medium and long-term goals. And the redesign of the space is medium to long-term and can be staged, but it's like, since I joined the board 3 years ago-ish, it has been like a constant, we need to clean the place up because it
Yes,
doesn't
neat
seem
and tidy.
professional. And nothing has ever happened because
Right.
there's always some sort of excuse. And so it's like,
Thank you
this
for
has just
that.
always been a
Yeah.
concern, and just like something needs to happen.
It does not look professional, and we need to look professional. That's a big deal, I
Yeah.
think.
So that's what I was thinking is that we should do, is that we should have a presentation visual in case somebody was doing a story in 7 days to
Yeah,
say what the Orca looks like. Because a sign saying this way on the campus is not going to make people have an idea of what their kids are coming to when they come to us. So it doesn't even have to be one picture of the whole place, but it could be 2 or 3 different things, some with people or some not, so
Yeah.
that we have a visual place that people can relate to and not just know there's an idea of a place that does this up there on the hill somewhere.
yeah. I think neat and tidy won't cost us much money either.
Do we have, I know I've asked this before, do we have like a commercial for Orca? I mean, we're a media place. We should have a fun commercial, like
Yeah.
Orca Media, and then like with jump cuts and cool music and.
I don't think we
some-
do we? Do we? No.
we have some, like, little, not confessionals, but like small little PSAs
The
of like
filler pieces.
of interviews during like our annual meetings. So we have those little, we had a couple of the students from the summer program doing some interviews. And so we have some of those that are that we do, whether it's like a commercial versus like an informational, or like it's
Well, what
not.
I'd love to see is this. We jump to like, we have 3 main channels. And so we have some content from each of our 3 main channels. So from community producers like
Mhm.
yourself, a couple of highlights of those shows, like some of your most popular things, pick, 30 seconds and
Right.
jump from that to that to that. Because the whole thing should be 5 minutes, an infomercial. And then a couple of key sessions or votes on the State House. So you do one of the Senate in session, one of the House in session, a couple of the committees, a couple of select board meetings, a school graduation, and just jump cut, and then some of the kids coming in and doing their programs,
Yeah, that'd be great.
and then, do a better one next year, but that one would at least get us, like, here's some of what you can do. The thing that I'd like to see for community engagement that I still think is low hanging fruit and that I still think would have a huge impact is to get people in here filming commercials for their small businesses.
Mhm.
Small business in Vermont is a huge opportunity. When I was getting the grant to bring EC Fiber up Route 14, which is how come I ended up on their board meeting, John Block, and it was, the way I did it was, and I didn't even expect this, I documented for the state all of the small businesses within a quarter mile of Route 14 of the particular section they were interested in, and I was like, okay. So I went to our Rails and Trails guys, our postmaster, and then knocked on doors. I discovered 54 small businesses within a quarter mile of a 4 mile stretch of Route 14 in like little teeny rural
Right.
Vermont where there's more cows than people.
Mhm.
But none of them know Orca's here. They don't know how to shoot little videos. At that time, there was no internet, so they were all kind of dead on the
That
vine.
would, yeah.
Mhm.
So we could make a big
Yeah,
difference.
'cause Zach and I are doing this project with the small businesses here in Montpelier.
Mhm.
And some of them know we're here and know all about us. One of them is gonna call you, I don't know if you contacted
Yeah.
them, to do other stuff here. And I've told every one of them that they can come back.
Yep.
and use it for free, and they're all excited. So if we invited them to do interviews, I mean, to do commercials, that'd be great.
Yep.
So let me call Tanya. If you two can sketch out something, the things you think are important, like you were just discussing. And then next meeting, we can have a roll-up sleeve sort of thing and get this done once and for all.
Tanya is,
It's Tanya Christensen? What's her last name? Oh my God.
Kristen,
Kristen.
I know.
I think it was Kristen.
where's
Just-
she,
yeah, just-
where's she connected with?
United Way. She used to be in charge of the bus routes here.
Okay.
Yep. And I may start having a little bit more time.
Oh,
This
good.
year's been tough for me, but would anybody be interested in working with me to go to the state for a grant to support ORCA supporting business development in
Oh, for
Vermont?
sure. I'll help you with that.
Cool.
I can do grants.
Okay.
Okay, so,
Okay.
All
So,
right. So you and I have an action item.
yeah.
Yeah.
Any other circle reports?
so policy circles met, we went over some, I added some, I think we've got some manuals from some of the other access centers. They did a wages and data survey, and so as a result, we got some information. So we looked over at some of that, and we've just been kind of looking through, and we have a spreadsheet, or we have a little table of contents of policies that need to be updated, policies that are missing, and then trying to keep track of things that need to get updated. And I think we all took, like, Michael took the bylaws, I took the policies and procedures, and I think Palin was going to choose. And so we
Right.
kind of have one area that we're kind of looking through and seeing where there's gaps and what needs to be updated. So
Right.
we've been just kind of trudging along on that. The outreach
Let
circle,
me just, Van doesn't help you with something like that?
I think, so what they did was they did a wages and data survey. So then they got links to other people's or employee handbooks. And so that's what I
Yeah,
uploaded
oh,
with
okay.
the other access centers employee handbooks that they had, and to see what, and that's kind of where we could see where there were some gaps. So I think
Yeah.
there were some policies that they had that were like, oh, we don't have
Good.
anything, and we do work with kids, so maybe we really need to make that more
Great.
robust. And so it's been nice to see the other access centers and what they've been working on and how they have updated it.
Okay.
So that's,
I think it's important, and I'm gonna put this out there, if we start working more with kids, younger people, to have a system like schools do, like it should always be two kids to one adult. I mean, there should be people present there.
mhm.
Mike
You know, for
Avani
protection,
would be an expert
right?
on that. Mike,
Right.
what's your guidance?
So that's super important.
I haven't seen that.
Well, I think also you have to have signage, sign
Using
off
that
that they
dark
can use them,
Well-
use their faces, right?
Well, I do know for a fact that we need to, if we're working a lot more with students, with kids, it should be follow the same school system, which should be something easier to extract from school policy
Oh, yeah.
So-
and integrate it.
I think JAM has a very robust
Okay, perfect.
child, I don't want to say safety protocol, but
But
policies around working
Right.
with children. So that's where it was like, when I looked through there and I was like, we are starting to, it's our
Right.
second summer, so really we do need to try to get that going.
Right.
So
Good.
I'm happy to share the link about the other access centers, like our policies and procedures that we've got from other groups. So if you wanted to take a look at it too,
Yeah,
that's, it's in the policy circles and it's open to anyone.
especially the HR policies, that's important.
Mhm.
Yeah,
So,
There
And
was
then-
something that we got on a tear on, and Zach was like, wait, hold on, they're actually working on this in the policy circle. So let's not, and do you remember what it
yeah,
was?
what was that?
Was it the thing about, I don't know what it would have been, it might have been some of the service-based stuff, the pay for.
Yeah.
Was that it?
I think it was, had to do with service for hire and other things. It had
Was
to do
that
with-
it?
Yeah. it was.
Okay.
Yep.
And it was like, don't you guys get on a tear about this too? They're
Oh,
working on
because
that.
the
So
other-
I'm
yeah, I remember saying that, but I don't remember what it, what topic it was on.
And so with the outreach circle, I did drop the ball and like wasn't able to schedule anything. I had sent out and then I was waiting for responses and then just didn't. So would like to try to get the outreach circle back together, and we have the Bill Doyle Award that was kind of put into our circle to go through. And I think the business conversation that CJ, you were saying, so you're part of the outreach circle, so that would be the circle to kind of pipe in about it. And I think one of the things that we had been touching upon in the outreach circles had to get out to the different service areas and having like maybe setting up some more of like a mobile studio, so that to think that all the people in our service area would come here to work on their things would not be necessarily realistic, and maybe it is more an issue about access. So then it's like, how do we try to get out into those service areas more frequently on a schedule? Or so that's kind of where we've been thinking. So, and I think that's also where we're like, okay, so if we have money, where are we trying to, how can we use it to make me do that mobile unit a little bit more?
Yeah, doing the mobile unit and maybe an internship.
So it's like staffing that mobile unit, stuff like getting people. So that's, I think, what kind of we've been talking in the outreach circles. So I'll try to get maybe a meeting and try to, I think you haven't quite been able to come in, so.
No, you've been chasing me. It was very nice of you to fall on your sword, Jen, but Jen's taken a bullet for me. So, thank you. You just owned my deficiency here.
So, I think that's the circles update.
Very good.
Okay, so.
Then do the budget. Any
Can I ask
comments
you-
about the circle report? I tried my hand at, I don't know if you saw, but I tried my hand at the Bill Doyle Award just because. I did that to Jim.
I looked through it today. I have some comments.
Oh, yeah. Well,
But,
that's up to
but I
Jim.
think,
I
yeah,
have passed
that's
it over to
another,
Jim. She can use it or not, however.
So.
You want to talk about the budget?
So, so this is the draft 2. I did send in November, like I made the update to the production revenue as we were talking about. And so I sent an email with a description of what I did. So just to reiterate, what I looked at was this year's conferences and annual meetings and said that I think we had like 50 hours. So I took half of that. And so next year, what we're going to do is we're going to ask conferences and annual meetings to pay for our time. And it could be that they may not use it. So I used half just because a lot of them come to us because we are free and they don't have the money to. And some of it, we reached out because we didn't have, we thought their information that they're presenting would be interesting. So we reached out to them and offered our services so we could get the content. So we're thinking that this year, if we're asking for it, we may not necessarily, they may say, oh, we're not going to, we can't pay for it, so we're not going to use it. And so we figured like halfway, we could probably get half those hours paid for versus not. So that's where
I wouldn't want to try to be competitive necessarily. Because whatever we get is more than we're getting.
So that's where that 3,000 came from, was like, if we just ask for half those hours and ask to be paid for those. And that's, I think that's primarily the adjustment.
What
And-
line is that?
Production revenues. So draft 1, I believe, had 0. And then, so draft 2 has 3,000. This year we had the
Oh, it's
30.
40/40. I was looking.
Oh,
for the
sorry.
number.
oh.
Sorry, 40/40. So, and then another change in the drafts were the government appropriations. We received the check, so it was like 49. I had put in 64,000, but it was like $64,049. So little bits, and changing those, we ended up changing the capital gains because that's the slot that we make the adjustment so that we end up at 0 budget. So if we end up, and I think, another one was we received the last Comcast check. So we generally be using the lowest Comcast check number as the number to use for the year. So the check that we received was the lowest. So that has been adjusted to show.
How is our amount from the state developed? Do we tell them we want $1 million or, or do they say we X for all of you and here's what you're getting?
So Van goes to the State House and asks for the budget, and the Van board they looked at everyone's, I think, how they came up with the ask for this year. So this year they're asking for 1.35, and how they came up was they looked at the revenue loss from Comcast and how much that was, as well as looking at the expenses increase. So that between those two, that's how they came to the 1.35. And I think generally, like when they came for the one-time government appropriations, was always like based on revenue loss as well. And so I think they got the million, and how they divided the million this year was they looked at the population. They took more of a, rather than doing a flat divide, they took the population that each access center serves and did a percentage of a portion of that money. And then they looked at the revenue loss that each EMO experienced and took a portion of that. And then they had one piece where it was a flat amount. So between those three types of pots that they added together, and that's how we ended up with the 64.
And is Comcast losing money every year? Is that what's happening? Where's when you're saying the loss?
Well, it could be that Comcast is losing money. It's the check that they're sending us is shorter and or smaller and smaller. And
Right.
whether that's because they're not getting more subscribers, and that I think is one of the things that has been saying is that there's not as many people buying cable TV
Right.
as
So
they
the-
were.
The revenue model for the community access stations is a percentage of cable entertainment revenues, not your cable internet.
Oh,
So as people cut the cord,
and what are they using instead?
they're streaming.
Oh,
So, you know, they're using their cell phones as hotspots to power their
Right,
televisions and
right.
running off of YouTube or, so as people move off these very expensive entertainment packages onto just internet or internet and phone packages, that decreases the revenue available to the companies like ORCA Media that, and so the legislative purpose of doing it that way, and if I recall, all 50 states passed, you know, it was kind of a federal move, but it was left to the states to determine what percentage, if I recall, of the cable entertainment revenues would be provided to make sure that there was the ability of the communities to have access to be content creators. And the concern was, and this is just because this happens to be my background in telecom.
yeah, right, no, I'm
The
glad.
concern was that there was such effectively a monopolistic situation where the large money producers would produce for the channels, and it would block out little people, you know, ability to create content and get their message out. And so it's a very democratic ideal behind this model. Of course, the cable companies didn't like it at all and were able to negotiate constraints on it. And having done some lobbying for, you know, and some activities for Bill Barr, when I was working for BT and Verizon, I can tell you that, you know, this didn't come from them. It didn't come from
Well,
us.
it's not like, so the more that we're able to increase our own revenue, the better off we'll be.
Right.
Because if
I
that
think-
money's going down and then Comcast isn't doing anything in response.
Well, it's so,
to
this is
protect
why it's so
their
critical
share.
that ORCA's role in helping to show the value of these community
Right,
access
right.
providers to the State House can't be understated. Van benefited enormously because
agree, I
the
agree.
weather issues that happened really allowed
Right.
ORCA to shine,
Right.
which allowed all of the community. So I think rather than thinking about getting more of our own revenue, we really want to just produce more and more, or get the community to produce more and more content. And that's
Well,
part of.
I think we want both. I mean, we
I
want
don't
both.
think
In
it's
an
either
ideal way,
or.
we want
I
both
think
things.
they're related, but
I think it's
Right.
both. I
Yeah, yeah.
agree with you, but I think it's definitely.
Yeah.
oh, you know me, I'm your treasurer. I'm the one who's like, money, money, money. But,
So
but-
question for you, so is the revenue that we get, is part of it that we get from Comcast, is it related to infrastructure and the use of infrastructure? Like for them, like thinking about the poles and
Oh, I
all
see what
that,
you're
and all
saying.
that stuff.
Right.
they
all
are
those things.
trying to make that model change, and Jen and Zach know more about it because you were at the
That's
van
Velcro,
meeting,
isn't
so
it?
I'm gonna turn back over.
Velcro owns all the poles and the wires.
No, the poles and wires, so here's where I can talk from EC Fiber experience, because that make ready, which is the payment to
Yeah.
get the poles, things on the poles moved around so we can lay the fiber or the strand. So the poles can be owned actually by anybody, but because they're set up typically in public rights of way, the state has an interest and has governance over, limited governance, but governance over how the poles can be accessed, what charges can be levied. And then companies like EC Fiber lobby their little fannies off to try to make sure that nobody bothers them, and Washington Electric and, Consolidated all do the same thing. I'll go and try to convince the State House to,
Oh, interesting.
yeah.
I thought it was Velco owned all the infrastructure. They own some.
Yeah, all these different companies own some of these poles.
So that has no impact on our check.
It does, and here's where Zach and Jen know more from going to the van meetings, or maybe Chris did, but and I hear about this from EC Fiber meetings as well, that they're trying to, that there is some attempt to try to get money from pole attachments and divert some of that over to support community infrastructure access. And that, I don't know where it stands.
So that was that poll tax that we talked about last year. And so I think it kind of died in the legislature, and then because we got put into the general budget, that they, and I think because so many people were against taxes, and so it was just one of those things that it just didn't move forward. And we got funding through the Secretary of State budget, so there wasn't like a push to kind of do it. But that's, I think when they did that study, that was one of the things that came out of that study of this is how we would get some long-term funding, is to do some sort of pole attachment.
Right.
So, but it may come up later. I think like different states are doing it. I think Maine had the poll tax, and or like the tax on streaming, or so there's been some sort of, there's been conversation, I think, about like a different type of long-term funding and what that might look like. And it's, if it's a tax to like the streaming rather than the cable TV. And so that's, I think it's been discussed, and whether it will be taken up this year versus like, I don't think the advocacy group has necessarily, I think it's been one of those topics that they're like, it's kind of good that it did happen, because, the word just kind of freaks everyone out. And so I think
up in the Secretary of State's budget was a good thing, because once you're in the budget, it tends to get renewed. But I will say that when I first joined ORCA's board, I said, obviously taxing streaming, or not taxing, but taking a portion of streaming revenues is the right thing to do. And I also predicted with great confidence that that would be a hill that the companies would try to die on. And interestingly, I didn't think that EC Fiber would join the battle of the hills to die on, but EC Fiber is absolutely against that.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Because anything that,
They want the money.
so EC Fiber is supposed to, started out as a charity and it's a municipality, but it's acting like a for-profit competitor. And so, and I can, and I invite people to go to the EC Fiber board meetings. They are governed by the open meeting laws, and that's why I can talk about it. Otherwise, as a board member, I couldn't. But those board meetings are open to the public, so.
I think, and I think my question was, to bring it back to this, my question was, is there a way in which the infrastructure, whatever it is, whether it's cable underground, whatever it is, poles, whatever, does it impact us in terms of taking away budget from us or giving us more budget? That was just the question.
So right now, no.
Okay.
Like, it's unrelated to that.
All right, moving on then. Thank you.
But is Van continuing to pursue streaming?
What is that question?
Is Van continuing to pursue a percentage of streaming?
Oh.
Because as everybody moves from entertainment packages, which finance these public access channels, to streaming, it's very consistent with the legislative spirit and intent to go to streaming.
So we gotta find a source somewhere.
This session, I would say, like, you're gonna be hard pressed to find anyone who's gonna wanna get in there and propose some other new tax.
So I was gonna
It's
say, I
not
don't
a
believe
tax.
this year. that because we are in, I think everything has been toward like getting legislative support over our budget requests in the Secretary of State's budget. So
Yeah.
that's really the focus. So it hasn't, like, I don't think so. And I don't know how confident I'm saying, but probably not this year is my understanding of it. So it may come up later, but I don't know, like, if there's a sense of like, we've totally given up on it, but it's just not this year,
Right.
is my understanding of it.
Yeah, but stop calling it a tax, please, because it's not.
Yeah.
What do they call it? Sharing?
Well, so it's the same thing that it's a percentage of entertainment revenues, cable entertainment revenues, or sorry, cable entertainment package revenues. And it's specifically that portion that's entertainment. So it's not a tax. It is literally a percent.
Probably feels like one though when it's coming out of our.
Well, if you're Verizon or Consolidated,
Yeah, right.
then, or actually, especially if you're Comcast, but all of them are doing this. And so when the entertainment moves over to streaming, our argument needs to be that the entertainment's moving over to streaming, people are just as challenged getting access to these types of facilities to create professional quality streaming and getting the guidance and the expertise. And having that kind of guidance and expertise, so ORCA should be, just as you're saying, you're experimenting with AI,
Right.
we're gonna need to be a center of expertise for modern digital streaming content creation so that we can.
Well, we have to think of something to get the legislature involved in ORCA.
So if we go to Phil Scott
Yeah,
and say, ORCA has become aware of the fact that we can support Vermont small business development. And then Paul Haskell and I did Vermont Futures. We did a lot of unpaid lobbying, and because it's a 501c3, so you can't lobby as a C3.
Right.
It's like very bad if you're getting paid for it, but you can do it unpaid advocacy. And so we got a bunch of legislation passed. We changed, I went to a meeting at the treasurer's office, and out of that came a change to VEDA, Vermont Economic Development Authority's ability to finance local projects. Suddenly they could do their largest ever project funding of $3 million per project to get fiber built out anywhere in Vermont. Now, they never then put on the type of expertise to evaluate projects to figure out if that 3 million was well placed, so they haven't really jumped on it.
Wonderful.
And they changed leadership to, but, so the stuff that allowed these, that allowed EC Fiber to become a municipality, so that type of stuff, what Paul showed me is, and we need to know this here at ORCA Media as well, is he knows what committees to take everything to. So I suggest that we see if he would talk to us, and he'll just be like, yeah, you need to go to this, and this committee. And, he reads he just obsessively reads E.T. Digger.
Yeah.
So I was gonna say, because I think we've left all the advocacy to the van folks so that we as the group maybe would be stronger. So if you want to,
so get Van involved.
so I was gonna say, if you wanted to, we could offline, I can reach out and we can talk about if you wanted to be a part of that group or listen in and do that.
Yeah.
So maybe outside of this group.
Even though it is our backwoods, this is a part of our service area, right? We have the State House.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't be I wouldn't see it as stepping over the line, but as long as we're there, we may as well help out, help out Van and everybody else.
Yeah.
So I was gonna say, so just because we're falling behind, we could definitely maybe part of outside we can meet, because I think Pat has said that she was gonna help with our portion of our legislative interactions, that Van has assigned to ORCA. So that's also kind of, we can have a conversation about
Cool.
what that extra bits could be.
Yep. So, and that's part of what we lost with Mike Doyle and Bill Doyle. They were our windows into that stuff.
For sure.
Bill was
Yep.
48 years in the state.
Yeah.
And he would sit there in his wheelchair, and he was just like the
He just knew
legislative
Never
guy.
said no.
But it wasn't just that. He was like a symbol,
Mhm.
and everybody, and as he got older and less able to hear, he remained effective just because he was like a mascot.
Mhm.
That is true. Okay, so,
So-
anyone else on the budget, Jim? When do we have to approve this, like now?
This, yes, this would be the I mean, if you didn't want to, we could, but it would start January 1st, so,
Okay,
so
so today's the day. So, anything else that needs to be flagged? We're gonna talk about the purchase of fiberglass.
Yeah. So the unemployment tax jump of 16%, is that, what's happening in the government that unemployment taxes went up so much?
So it's not so much that, I think it's that we have, like, we used to use the camera operators sporadically, so like they never hit that amount, and so it was always very little, but now we're starting to have, like, we have a editor that's almost 30 hours a bit, so we have some longer working camera operators, so it becomes, I think that's where it was, like, we were using more, so I just kind of budgeted a little bit more so that we were affected by them,
But
just
that's all
because.
based on our use. That they go back and look at the use, right? That's how they judge.
I was like, I generally have done it, I think this one is the line where I've just done a percentage of, it's a percentage of their salary,
Right.
and depending on, like, it stops after a certain period, and so I think it was always kind of little, and then some that we were using a little bit longer, because some of the camera operators, like, especially if they could do many of the events, we use them up to the 30 hours, rather than a lot of,
Yeah.
having a lot of them that only did 5 hours.
But the rules for next year are changing for unemployment, right, for 501(c)(3)s.
Like, rules
I
around,
thought
or,
that there was, that just get constantly peppered by these notices that that now 501(c)(3)s, I'm not, is gonna be mandated to offer employees, is it unemployment and some other, I don't know if it's some other benefit too.
so I think what I looked at it was that you didn't have to do it, we always did it. So it wasn't like we weren't getting affected by it, because we always did what we were supposed to do, but I think some of the, like, what I was reading was some of the other ones didn't necessarily have to do it, so they may not have done it, so those notices.
But now everyone needs to
Yeah,
do it.
and we were already doing
Okay.
it, so it wasn't a thing that we were worried about.
So that's not what's affecting the change. in the
No,
numbers.
no, it's just, it's primarily
Based on
how,
use?
like, yeah, how we are using our camera operators.
What's the big drop in health and dental? Is it because Chris is no longer here?
Yes,
Okay.
I
So
mean,
it's-
so Sean, it's like, because how we do the budget, we've done it based on what we've selected versus, like, I guess theoretically, like, the really conservative way would be to do always like the family amount, like the most amount, because theoretically anyone could have the family and take that amount, but we've done the one where we kind of done, this is what we have always chosen, and that's what is set the year. But it could theoretically, like, if Zach wanted to change his to a family, like, he has that right, and so our budget would increase, or like, not the budget, but our expenses would increase, but I didn't budget that way, just because I think it's a lot of money to hold just in case someone.
Right.
Mhm.
And are you seeing policy increases this next year too?
On health insurance?
Yeah,
for
health
sure.
insurance.
Yeah,
Yes.
health insurance.
It is, yes, I think it was like 20% for our plan, because we also have our benefits, so we allow each one to choose whatever plan that they want. So some benefits, some plans like increase like 24% and others like only 20%. So it was,
Only.
well, I know, but.
I know.
I know.
I mean, if health insurance, that's unsustainable. Did you guys all see the $50 billion that United Health Insurance, the Medicare Advantage plans are ripping the government off by getting
Yep.
people to have
Yes.
diagnoses that they're never treated for and they're not real? So,
But even with those, the increased policies, there's still a net decrease in the total.
Yeah,
for
just
the-
because we're all, of the plans that we've selected, it's like that family plan was a ton of money. So,
so the thing I'm trying to figure out though is, so how many full-time employees are are currently,
3.
okay, and there was 4 when Chris was here?
No, there was always
It was
3, but for health insurance, he had,
A family plan?
yeah, and that was, and
That's a big
whereas,
expense.
Okay. All right, so with Chris gone. And new person, so this is a family, okay, so this one's really tricky because it's gonna go up and down.
Oh,
It's hard to
healthcare? Oh,
budget.
yeah, you can't even, can't
And
plan that one.
the
Yeah.
consultants 45. We had 13 last year and 10 for next year. What are the,
the 10 is the auditor. So the
Oh, okay,
auditor was
okay.
always there, and 10, I think we did 3 for the strategic planning if we were gonna have him come back to do some more work. So we kind of had that, but we're thinking we're not gonna do that. So we just kept the 10,000 for the auditor, even though we did have the letter was gonna be less, but I figured we'll just keep it in there just in case.
Right, a
Yeah.
little slush money might be good.
I feel like we shouldn't say slush money, like we just gave ourselves some cushion in case there was more hours were needed.
Yeah, no, if they find anything,
Yeah.
then that.
That might come into play.
Good to know
So
it's there.
Yeah, no, so, and I still appreciate the board, supporting the request for an audit when you change treasurers, because,
Yeah, well, I'm very impressed with her. I know you talked to her. I think she'll do a good job.
yeah, I haven't talked with her.
Oh, I thought you did. Email? maybe?
I did talk with
I
her?
thought you did.
Maybe.
if the 10,000 is for the auditor, then why is the accounting fee, there's such an increase there?
So
Yeah, it's
you'll
gonna-
see that we are over on the accounting fees this year. So what we budgeted was, I finally got some numbers from the accounting, so I was able to, because I think we were under budgeting for the accounting. And so we were over, so that's why I made the adjustment. So if you look through for the actual 2024, we're at like 5,000 already for this year. And I think we have one more payroll, and so we'll have another.
That's MG.
And who does
Yeah.
who does the
So
1099 or what?
They do the 1099, and they also, or they do the tax returns as well. So I left it also with a little extra, just so also, he's gonna have to do some work on the audit. So that's gonna be billed. So
Mhm.
it's gonna be,
That's the extra
So,
$2,000.
Yeah, he's
It's
gonna
not
have to
quite-
work with her a little bit.
I was like, it was gonna be over to begin with, and then I left a little extra in there too for audit time. And so that's
Mm.
where it's like, we were always gonna be over, and I wanted to fix that. And then added a little extra for audit stuff.
So our
So-
accountant so basically our accounting costs per year are about $5,000. Plus or minus, sorry, our accounting costs per year for an outside accountant are around on the order of $5,000.
Yeah, about 5,000, and that includes doing the tax return. That amount includes doing the tax return.
And we file a 990.
Yes.
And we file a full 990 because our income is more than $50,000.
Mhm.
So, but our 990 shouldn't be changing very much from year to year.
No, and it's, so they charge about like 1,700 for the 990. So I don't know if it's like gathering all that, even though there isn't a lot of change, but it's still like getting the numbers. And so I was hoping, like, so I've been trying to see like I've taken on some of the accounting stuff that I think he used to do. So I was trying to decrease the amount of time
Yeah.
that he needed to spend. So he really is doing just the payroll and the quarterly unemployment, the quarterly reports that he submits in.
Right.
So hopefully, and then like the end of the year, he's like moving some or clarifying. So I think I've been trying to figure out how to decrease it, but it may be that is the amount. And I don't know if it's like the rate also increased while his work, like his needs. So I don't know. I'm not quite sure
Yeah.
exactly, because I've been trying to look at historical, like how much was it before when it was Rob, and he was doing much more.
Right.
And I just can't get it to be cheaper. So I'm like, it must just be like there was a rate change that must have happened. And so
Yeah.
I've kind of left it there with like the not having him do more than he's supposed to do, which is just
Right.
payroll. So I've been trying to keep it and do as much in-house that we can.
Yeah.
And
I guess-
I know I've asked this before, Jim, but do you have directors and directors insurance?
Yeah.
Board,
It's
is
in there.
that on here somewhere?
It's under the,
Business insurance?
mhm.
Okay.
That's important.
That's important.
Who's our
for-
insurance
That's
company,
important
if
for
you
those of
know?
us who have a house.
Yeah. Oh, my gosh,
Yeah.
especially.
I had that
I'm-
happen at the, it was a freedom of speech lawsuit,
Mhm.
and they can't sue a company for freedom of speech, so they sued me individually.
Yep,
And I could have,
Whoa.
if things hadn't gone my way, I could have lost my house and
yeah.
everything
Yeah.
else. But
But they
Whoa.
sued you
yes,
individually.
this is, I've never gone on a board that doesn't have
Mhm. You know.
board insurance.
Yeah. So one thing that's interesting, because I also was sued for volunteer work for a not-for-profit as an officer, an elected officer.
Yeah. there you
In
go.
theory, an elected officer of a volunteer not-for-profit, such as yourself, myself, all of us on the board that are elected, cannot, under the Federal Volunteer Protection Act of 1998, I think it was one of Clinton's last acts signed into law, because lawsuits against volunteers were so depressing to volunteer service on community boards and other things, churches and, you know,
Yeah.
boys and girls clubs. Well, there are some loopholes, and there's an interesting article in the American Bar Association about, and I'm way off topic here, but just as a quick side note, because we are a charity and we're a recognized 501c3, and the government, the legislature defined charity very broadly, and it didn't just include 501c3s. They really wanted to support volunteerism and community service. And so your lawsuit, if you were a volunteer for anything, should have, you should, in theory, have been able to go back and say, hey, under the Federal Volunteer Protection Act, I didn't egregiously kill anybody. Like I didn't kill anybody on purpose,
Right.
or rape or.
We don't know the facts of her case.
Yeah. Notice I'm not saying a thing.
I don't know,
But
but
this has to
Seen
do
her
with a
closet.
license plate, however. It
But
said
she
shit
said
happened,
free
shit
speech.
happened, shit happened to you.
Yeah, but the
On a
key
lawsuit,
thing
on
is,
a license plate.
but it literally said you have no liability unless you have willfully done
Yeah,
bad things, as
Right.
long as you are either a volunteer of or an elected.
And like as I was working for state government and the license plate said shit happened, and I said no. And she told
Oh,
me
really?
that was freedom of speech and sued me. So anyway, we have to get moving.
Oh,
here.
yeah.
Oh, if you're
What-
Okay.
working for
So
the
what do you
government,
need
that's
to vote on? What number are we looking at here for voting for, this all says 2024.
different. All right, your Wilson
Jim, can I
Entertainment
ask you a
employees-
question?
Yes, please.
You explained that, that capital gains increase, was it like a way to make up the difference? What kind of mechanism is that for that
What
30
line?
grand? It's 20 something grand of that 30 is getting made up with that capital gains line. And I just want to understand that.
So I think that, and I don't know if it was like that we're pulling from our savings to match, to adjust for the decrease in revenue. So like in terms of like, it was my understanding that we use the capital gains as like pulling from our savings to cover the revenue loss, as well as if there were like increases in expenses, so that we came to a zero budget. So like in terms of this year's budget, we've done the expenses so that there's less than last year's, but our revenue is still decreasing. So in order to be able to not have a deficit budget, and we don't have a revenue way yet, besides pulling from our savings to come up with a plan to make up that revenue loss. And that's, I think we are considering, like, we know that we're not going to always continue to pull from our savings to be able to do it. And so our plan is to like look at revenues, but to look at revenue, alternative revenue streams and try to bring that in. But it's something that we've been kind of working toward and making adjustments. So it's like now we're also looking at, we've got the state money, but it's also that revenue loss is pretty big compared to what, I guess, so we don't have another revenue that's coming in besides from the state to make that adjustment. And our expenses are increasing, as well as like we are trying to decrease the amount. So it comes down to like, we could try to not spend money like I think that was one of the plans that Rob had, was we just decrease the amount of money that we spend in order to do that. So we've been trying to do that. So we're careful about like the pieces that we are increasing are like, we're increasing the camera operator hours and the mileage so that hopefully we're out in the service area being known. And so hopefully we can start turning those into whether it's production services revenue or if it's some other way to get money. And I think the next step probably is to have the conversation of, do we want to do membership? Do we want to start to do underwriting? And so I think that's part of maybe what the outreach circle might do is like, these are like, we hadn't really kind of gone out for money and trying to get alternate revenue, but that's the plan, is to use the savings until we can get these other things to kind of take over that loss. So it's not a forever plan. I don't think it is like our plan of using our savings in order to make up for the loss. So, but it is the process now.
So did we dip into savings in 2024?
We haven't yet.
So what's that 39.6?
That 30 is capital, that's the interest from the Ed Jones funds. So that's just, it's revenue. So it's just the interest that we have that has been logged.
It's not just interest, it's
Yes,
capital gains.
yes.
From the Ed Jones Fund. So,
That's a very good fund.
well, so what the problem is, the 2024, is that 39,600?
47 here.
No, I know, but Jen, is that, are you? Where are you pulling that number from?
So-
to answer Mike, because I've got the same question Mike does.
So what I've been pulling to put that into the books is it's the amount for the month.
Yep.
And that's what I've been putting in for each month. So like that amount there, and then each month was different. So I think at the end of it all, like, so that's not including December. So it's just November. So that's what that is.
Well, so.
So I'm sorry. So the budget, what we did was we took that number 39.6. Sorry, I misunderstood. I was looking at the actuals. The budget, what we did was we said, in order for us to be able to come to negative 10,000, which is the audit amount, we need a certain amount in capital gains savings. That's what that was. And that was the amount that we would need in order to come out to be negative 10,000. So it's primarily just what we would need to make it to be whatever amount, whether it's 0 for this year, whether it was we give negative 10,000 for last year, that's what that number is. And that's where I think it started from when Rob presented a budget with a deficit budget year that he had a deficit budget, and he said, we're gonna start using the capital gains.
Right.
That's where that process came in. So my understanding was, like, in order to make our budget work, we need to have some money coming in from capital gains. And that, I think, if I remember correctly, it was a recommendation, like Mike Doyle said, it was okay to do, was to put in, to use or budget some amount revenue from capital gains. That's my understanding. So that's what I've been doing to be able to get it to a 0.
So our actual portfolio value increase, I'll start the treasurer's report and interleave it a little bit, we can do this again, is 53,700, which from, well, actually, no, it's more than that. It's about 58,000. Sorry, I did a 11-month versus a 12-month. So the 39,647 you're saying is derived by taking a monthly expected capital gains and then multiplying by 12, or?
It was just, it really wasn't based on what was expected. It was like, we would need to make 39,000 in order to make it to be a 0.
Like a target.
So in
Yeah.
essence, our budget shortfall is 39,647.98, and so we're gonna pull that. I'm looking at line 4,800 capital gains, and I'm looking
Right.
under 2024. So in essence, what I'm seeing is the top two lines, 4010 and 4010C, which are operating and capital revenues from the cable companies, gives us a total of about a $40,000 decrease from last year, right? So that's our shortfall from theoretically decreasing entertainment revenues, and that's starting to come off a cliff. Micah Body, that's, how fast is that coming down from your time?
Well, I always read it by the quarterly. So Jen, you built that off of a quarterly what times 4 to get that number. Was in the 80s now, or is it? It peaked at about 105, I think,
Mhm.
in a
So
quarter.
I take it from the lowest amount for that quarter and then use it against 12. So I use
And
it
what
against
was that
12.
lowest amount?
I think it was 80,000 that we
So
just
we're in
got.
the 80s now at a peak of 105.
Yep.
Oh,
So that's worth going to the legislature about.
Right.
Right, and saying, hey, heads up, guys, unless,
Right.
you know, you want community participation, better step up.
That is what Amanda, I mean, that's
Dan's
all,
supposed to do,
yeah,
right.
the advocacy's been always like revenue loss, and that's where
Right.
the budget,
Yep.
all the appropriations from before was based on, like, this is, this
Right.
budget, the revenue
Okay.
loss.
But that gets me to 4,200 government appropriations, which were Van, you know, in theory, should have gotten us the 40,000 to make up the revenue shortfall, and got instead 24,000, leaving us with a shortfall of about 16,000, right? Sorry, yeah. So 23,908 is what I'm looking at under, oh, I'm sorry, no, my bad. Yeah. The difference,
The difference is from 2025 and 2024.
yes, you're right. So the government
That's an
appropriations,
increase.
you're right. So the government appropriation for 2024 does more than make up for the 40,000 then, right? Because they got us 45,000.
So, let's
And that's
see,
line 4,200 government appropriations.
I see what you're doing, but I think that it isn't,
I could be totally wrong. I didn't
because the
put this
45
together.
is to cover the revenue loss of 2024. So if we looked at the numbers, what 2023 was,
Yep.
and what 2024 ended up being, to see if that,
Oh,
what
yeah.
that revenue loss was, and
Yes.
did the 45,000
Right.
cover
You're
it?
absolutely right. I'm missing
So,
that data. I'm
In
sorry.
terms of theoretically, that 64
Mhm.
will cover our 30, well, I guess our revenue loss from 2024. So that 34 and 6 that you were talking about, the 44, so the
Yeah.
64 would cover it.
Yeah.
So in that sense, if you're looking at that number, that 64 would cover the revenue loss that we're expecting from against 2024.
Mhm.
It doesn't necessarily, I think, cover the expenses part. So even though we did do less, I think we've always, if we didn't use the capital gains, we would have been over on expenses against our revenue
Yeah.
by about 40,000.
Right.
And so this year, like even without, like our budgeted amount was less than this year, 2024, we're still gonna be, our expenses are gonna be over by 63,000, 64,000. Even with the 64 that would cover the revenue loss. So it is a question of like, just expenses are going up.
Right.
And we're also, I think, we've tried to keep certain areas down, but at the same time, I think, you know, I think
and
the
this doesn't include infrastructure. I'm thinking like
facility stuff,
facilities.
no, not
Right.
the equipment,
Right, the equipment.
but not the facilities, yeah.
The equipment, it does include the equipment.
It does include the equipment, so we still have like the equipment for the cameras and replacing the cameras, but we've always kind of left the facilities a little bit outside of that. So if we're talking about like getting a new curtain for the studio,
Right.
like that wouldn't have been part of that budget. And so that's why like we were worried about the interior design, because we're like, you know, we're
Yeah.
very tight
Yeah,
on
yeah,
stuff,
It
and
won't
so.
cost you anything.
I hear you. I hear that. I hear that,
Tidy
yeah.
doesn't cost.
Okay,
And the maintenance, so down to 7050C and 7070C, maintenance has gone from 7,000 to 0, and rent has increased a little bit of that. Where did maintenance go? Like, why is there no more maintenance?
So maintenance is the software maintenance for Hypercaster, so that's Harriet's
okay.
maintenance, so it's not
Gotcha.
like
Talking about that in a minute.
facilities maintenance. So that's where if
Okay.
we bought the new Harriet, we wouldn't have, we get next year free, so we wouldn't have
Right.
an amount for the
That's a good thing.
maintenance. Rent increases by 3%. And then they started, we're now paying property tax or our portion of property tax,
Ooh,
which we didn't pay before. So that's where that's also increasing. So it's a little bit more than the 3% because now we're paying our portion of.
when did that happen?
We didn't know that?
No, it was always in the lease. DCFA, I think maybe just didn't, whether they didn't have to pay it or they didn't charge us
Well,
for it.
yeah.
Hmm.
But with the new landlords, it is something that they got the bill for, so they are letting us pay. They're giving us the invoice for our portion of the property
Okay.
tax. So it wasn't it wasn't out of the blue because it was in the lease, but it was just something that wasn't kind of
Right.
done. And so now we know a number, so we've put it into the rent. line.
Are they for profit or nonprofit?
Greenway, I believe, is
Yeah.
nonprofit.
Okay, so it should be,
So, and I was gonna say, the other bit is I've been just using the amount that they gave us, so, and that's for the year, but there may be an increase in that property tax. So
Mhm.
even though we budgeted for this amount based on that number,
Yeah.
if the property tax increases, there will be an increase, but I don't know. And so we will plan to be a little bit over budget on the rent at the end of 2025, I would imagine.
So expenses will be over by 64,000. Why again?
Just based on our expenses, and I think, because last year, we were gonna be over our by 4,000 or 40,000, and that's also, it's really 50 because we were ending up with a negative 10,000, so it was just, our expenses were always higher than what we were bringing, and we just were using the capital gains amount, that revenue, to kind of offset that.
Right. Well, my only requests, if other people feel like this is reasonable, would be if we could break the compensation into full-time and part-times. That would, I think, help
Understand it better?
understand it better. So that's 50-10 compensation. If we could, under consultants, I find it non-obvious to put the auditor under consultants. So I don't know, especially given that right below it, 2 lines below, we have accounting fees. You and I both had that confusion, so I don't know if it makes sense to pull the audit into its own line since we don't expect to do it annually.
So that's why I think we stuck it in consultants, because consultants we don't use, and it would just be for the auditor. So in a way, like without creating a whole new
Line.
account code, like
Yep.
the consultants right now is just like the auditors. And so
Mhm.
because not a lot of stuff go into it, that's why we were thinking like that would be easy to track out, like that's how
Mhm.
much we're spending on the auditor versus like the accounting fees, because that's gonna vary, like, if they had to do more work on the
Yeah.
payroll, or we had an extra, like a problem, or like, so
Mhm.
it's like, that's why I didn't want to throw it into the accounting fees, just so that we could kind of keep it
No,
separate,
I
so.
agree that it doesn't go in accounting fees. I was like, God, I was just confused that it was in
Maybe
consultants.
just indicate with a hyphen and just say audit and just leave it. That's the only thing that's in it.
Yeah, that's the only thing that's in it.
Yeah, so consultants dash auditor. Yeah,
Yeah,
that
okay.
works for me.
Because
And then
we
on
do that on the
70/50
bottom with capital.
Yeah, and 70/50C maintenance capital, the fact that that was software totally threw me. I was.
Well, it was like maintenance of the hardware, it was maintenance of the equipment.
Yeah,
And so that's why I think,
okay.
like, I say it's software, but it's like, it was just maintenance of the equipment, so.
Mhm.
It's
And not
getting really
facility
late, folks.
maintenance. It is getting late. Yeah.
So, Jen, you have, and I know this, where it says budget, it's supposed to be 2025 budget. There's nowhere on these sheets where it says 2025.
So this is,
What am I looking at that's different than yours?
so that's the one,
I don't have any with blocks out like you guys have.
did I miss it in the staple?
No, it's probably
It should be the second page of here. Yeah, and it's
Oh.
one page on-
wrong one.
Okay.
Okay, so there it was. Okay, because I was looking at this going, maybe not. All right. So is there any other questions? Because we would need a vote on this if everybody's comfortable with what's here.
My only other question is mileage. It's increased by a very substantial amount, and I was just curious. It's a 65% increase over 2024, which was a big increase over COVID periods, of course.
Yes. So what we did was, because we are trying to do more out in the service
out there
areas
more,
like
yeah.
Rochester and Bethel,
Right.
like our mileage is
And,
higher just because it comes like, they're calculating mileage from our office to there.
Uh-huh.
So, and we increased it, so we were over this year as well. So it's just, as we try to get more camera operators out to those areas, the mileage will just increase. So we said, if that's one of our goals is to get out into those service areas, then we need to adjust the mileage to accommodate for those extras.
Jim, what do you pay,
Distances.
Fed rate?
Yes.
And travel expenses are, like if they need to get a meal on the road or
So
something?
travel expenses are related to conferences. So if we
Okay.
wanted to go to any conferences, like those, that's where the travel expenses would live. I
Okay.
don't think we have plans
Yeah.
on going anywhere, but just if there was something, we kept that amount in there.
Okay.
And travel and mileage were probably near zero during the COVID years, and we're just kind of
Right.
coming out of that.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then meals and entertainment. are
Well,
sort
and
of-
it's-
I don't see really any, I don't see, like, Jen, you did a great job with tough numbers. I don't see any fat here, and I moved to accept the budget.
Okay, cool. All right, Mike
I s-
moves to set the budget.
I second.
Second, Carlos, any further comments? And I think Zach mentioned before that we've got a pretty wide range to cover. It takes
Yeah.
us an hour to get to the one end when others have 20 minutes, so.
Yeah.
Okay, any comments? If not, all in favor, say aye.
I,
Aye. Opposed? So moved.
All right.
Good
All right.
job, you guys.
Thank you.
Sorry, I wasn't looking at the right.
So
My,
on,
my copier doesn't copy that. Okay, so, then you can talk about the Hypercaster purchase.
so I think the Hypercaster purchase was just a report back about, I did try to look at grants. And we have a grant database that we subscribe to, and I did go through, and I wasn't able to find anything. It was hard because I think a lot of them said not operating budgets, and so, and Harriet's just key part of that. And so I did try, I wasn't able to find any. I think one thing that I did came out of it is, I think there's been an email about our affiliation, like the board members and their affiliation or their organization. So I think there's a couple that I still haven't gotten, if I could get that information. So we could have a good list of the board members, so that all the board members and their affiliation that I can send off to grants or like things that, because that is one of the questions that they have about the board members. So you'll be getting another email, and you may, if you could respond, we could get that together so that if we do come across some grants, that we're ready to go.
Good.
So I think, I'm not sure if it needed, I think last meeting, it was approved, like there was a motion
Right.
to approve it, but there was like that hanging of try to find some money kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I just put it back on the agenda just to say I've tried and didn't, sorry. So I don't know if there needs to be anything else outside of that, but I guess just to kind of say out loud, I will be purchasing the Hypercaster. And then, so CJ, maybe like afterwards, we could just talk about the best way to go up and to do the transfer of money to be able to pay for it.
Yep.
Okay,
Carlos, did you note that we approved that Hypercaster with a vote?
In the last meeting?
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't see it.
No?
If not, we should redo it.
because I was like, I did see Chad motion to approve the Hypercaster
Where is that?
purchase.
Yeah.
Underneath in the minutes,
I
underneath
think we
the
did.
Hypercaster purchase.
This is-
Yeah, Dave seconds.
Okay, good. Oh, here it is. Okay,
Section 5.
okay. Excellent, cool. And when is this thing arriving? I want to see this.
So I would imagine now that we have the official approval, that it will be sometime in January, so I'll go and
Good job.
try to schedule that together.
Okay, moving on, we have the approval of the October 22nd minutes.
You want a treasurer's report?
Oh,
It's coming up.
coming
I
up.
was just checking. I was.
Sorry, we usually put it extra. Okay,
Yeah.
yes.
So the October 22nd report. Any,
So I think, Carlos, at the last one, I think those numbers that you had, you wanted me to double check it against the report. And I have it in red to do that, so and then I made another copy, so I have the numbers to adjust, but it's not in the one that was printed, so I think that those do need to get updated with the numbers, so if we can make that change.
These numbers on the report.
On the financial report section of the total balance, I think Carlos did ask me to look it up and put in the right numbers, which I didn't do it on to that form, the minutes that are here, but
You're gonna give them to Carlos?
yes,
change
to make
on
those
the minutes?
updates.
Can you send it to me? Where would I have access to that? Oh, I see. October, right?
Mhm.
Okay. So if there are no questions, could I have a motion to approve the minutes with the change with the update of the numbers under financial report that Jim's gonna give Carlos?
And I'm obligated to abstain because I was not there.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
I'll move.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I can move it. I
You
just
can
can't.
move it, I think, yes, sir. Do we have a second? Don't be
I'll
shy.
second. I'll
Thank you,
second
Chad.
you.
Thank you. Any comments? All in favor of approving the minutes as submitted, except for the change in numbers under the financial report? Please say aye.
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 Opposed? So moved.
I just want to express my appreciation for these amazing
Yeah, no,
minutes.
they're excellent. Easy to read, too.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
you're busy over there.
Now you're up.
No, but you set the.
Oh, the template.
Yeah.
I love the little boxes with the X's, who's here. I'm gonna use that in minutes I do for somebody else. Okay,
And
the
that was
financial
Jen's
report.
invention.
Yeah.
The boxes, it's a team effort.
So the financial reports, I'll just keep it real short. We have an increase in 59,000 and change from a year ago. Which sounds nice. So we're just over $500,000 in total portfolio values. Now we're at $500,823, $500,823, up from $441,587 a year ago. The good news is it's up about 12%, 11.8. The bad news is the markets are up much more than that. So Stephanie did send me a link to convert to online access, and we need to go ahead and get with them. They're a little bit forgetting some of the things that we're recommending, in that they're still showing Mike Doyle and myself as the people to keep in the loop on this. So,
Okay.
when I talked to Stephanie, she's just like, I've been really busy and I've, missed it. And I said, it's fine, these are all people we completely trust. But so at some point, you and I need to
Yep, we
go
should
sign the
when we work on
papers.
your, on the, on the grant. We
can pop
can
over.
pop over.
Yep, that sounds good. And the other information is just that, as I reported some time ago, rather than do laddered quarterly CDs, given the interest rates were starting to look like they were going to decline, I moved all of the funds, which is close to 150,000, over into two CDs that are both yielding about 5.3% and 5.45%. Those kinds of interest rates are no longer available. They will mature next year. One matures in a few weeks, in early January. That's our 5.3%. But the bigger chunk of money, 80,000, I put into a CD maturing next July at 5.45%. We will not see these kinds of, I don't think we're going to see these kinds of good returns for a decade. So the party's over. We have a very small corporate bond in Verizon that Mike Doyle had done that's still yielding great, 5.85%. It's a corporate bond, so they yield more. In fact, our mutual fund losses are in a bond fund. So we're, since the cost basis of 50, and that was our biggest holding at 55,000, that's lost about 6,250. So in short, it's conservatively done. It's healthy. I was going to suggest that we spend some of it because, it would be wonderful to get an internship funded or something like that, something that gave to the community, but I'm gonna suggest that we go ahead and flesh that out, but that we go beg for money. Because
I
the
like begging,
shortfalls
yeah.
are, as Mike,
Right.
as Mike Abadi just said, we've gone from 105,000, what, 2 years ago, Mike?
Yeah. I don't think he heard you.
Um,
Mike?
I would guess the peak would probably have been like 2018,
Mhm.
More
and
like
then we
5
kind of
years ago.
leveled to 100,
Yeah,
and then we've just had this steady decline since.
yeah. David, Connor, you had
I had a question about the coming Trump years. Does anyone have any idea as we enter into the strangeness of Mr. Trump and his weird cabinet picks, what effect it's going to have on the work that we do and the work of cable networking and other things? Does anyone have any inside hunches or have heard anything at all about
Nope, haven't
policy
heard.
changes that may come with the next administration?
That is an amazing question. I mean, I don't have any whatsoever
Yeah.
right now.
Carlos just asked the same
I
question.
asked the
before
same
we
questions,
started.
but that is a good question that everybody should have on the back burner, and
Yeah.
some people should be looking into this.
Yeah, I would think, I have not heard a thing about,
Right.
about,
No, I know, me neither.
because I'm not putting that, because this is very important, but given all the slightly larger issues that are facing the world these
Right.
days, I doubt that that's something that's gonna come up for a while. It may come up, but not right away. I mean, you've got 2 wars, 3 wars, few other things, and the
Yeah.
economy down the tube, so there's a few other things that probably will come first, but
Right.
I would think reaching out to the public would be something he would like.
Well, I think the question is, where do the government stands in terms of public access media? That's the question, right?
Right. I
I
can't
think
imagine
we
he
are
wouldn't like
such,
it.
well,
We're so
so
small, that, right?
I
Yeah,
think we're relatively small
Right.
potatoes and we
Right.
can vigorously defend ourselves on the basis of the natural disaster utility value of community
Right,
access
absolutely.
television.
Right.
yeah, I think this is sort
But
of
it's a state question, not a federal question.
Right.
As it stands. The big question is really the push for streaming revenue percentage. And I would be inclined to push really hard right now.
I wouldn't mention anything we have in the bank at the moment, because if they find out we have that money, they would ask us to spend it.
Well, given the decline in income, that we're spending it. I mean,
Right.
Jen is removing some of this money, right, to make up.
Well,
for-
yeah, we should not really
Not
highlight
yet.
that.
Not yet, but I mean, but we're essentially
Right.
We're
assuming
budgeting
that,
that.
we're budgeting that way. So yeah, we're digging into it.
Because they'll ask us to
Mhm.
spend it. They would.
Maybe. I
Oh,
mean,
I know
it's,
them.
Yeah.
oh, you mean, the,
Oh,
You
yeah.
know.
If they knew you had that kind of money, they would,
well, they will know because this is a public
well,
record that we've just
well,
created here.
I can't imagine any one of them is listening to this, but in
Are
case
you-
they are, then, we wouldn't not tell them, but
Once this is posted, it will be crawled and digested
Hmm.
with everything else. So it's,
Yeah.
unfortunately, as Carlos and I were talking about AIs. So for what it's worth, because we are about to do some investment modifications, the tail end of my treasurer's report will be, although we will now have a wider variety of funds that we can invest in, my thinking at the moment is to remain pretty, just stay with Mike Doyle's strategy and possibly expand into a few new areas like
Right.
AI, because that seems to be a real thing.
that would be an interesting discussion for sure.
Well,
And
I
I think any funding that we have would be there for our future, not,
Yeah, I mean-
it's important that we remain active and.
Yes, and Jen and I have been working, I think, really well together
Yep.
because with your day-to-day knowledge of, and just kind of natural aptitude, it's to Jen's credit that we have these
Yeah, right.
great money market investments. That wasn't my genius. That was Jen going, hey, do you think? And I was like, that's a great idea. So my feeling is that, our goal is to keep it, a certain percentage of operating revenue, so we have that cushion to fall back
Right.
on. as we try to develop new revenue sources. And you and I need to, in addition to figuring out the accountant, but we need to go figure out what the model looks like as the revenue shortfall increases, and whether Van's outreach to the legislature to get that shortfall met in the budget, how that we think that's gonna work conservatively, and then come back to the board and say, it looks like we might have this much that we could use to finance like a internship to support business development of Vermont small
Rainy day fund.
businesses. Well, no, this is specifically to cover things like Harriet falls over and we suddenly need $70,000. So back to your question, the way that it was done under Mike Doyle is when ORCA needed money, it literally under Rob Chapman and Mike Doyle, it borrowed money from these funds and paid ourselves back with interest out of the grants. Is any, Mike Abadi, David Connor, you were here at that time, is that right? Mike, you were.
Yeah.
Do you think we should just do the same thing? Take a page out of Mike Doyle's book again, or what are you all thinking, Jen and Zach?
Well,
I was here
Yep,
during
you were
that, yeah.
Do you want to just borrow the money from these
Borrowing
funds
it
for
for-
Harriet?
for
Or
what?
I'm not sure what we're talking
Yeah,
about.
I don't know, what are we borrowing money
you
for?
had asked how to finance this big purchase that we have coming up.
Yes.
And I said,
To-
you could do the same thing that we did the last time we
Right.
needed a big sudden chunk of money. We could borrow it and
The
pay ourselves
hypercastle.
back with interest.
Mhm.
So that's one way to handle it. If a grant doesn't come through.
I remember Mike Doyle, it was a bit of a gamble,
Mhm.
and he pitched the idea that if we sort of made ourselves the bank,
Mhm.
Right,
we could better than break even. And it just happened to be where interest rates were. It felt like a very kind of specific, I don't know if interest rate conditions are anywhere near in that neighborhood.
Were they
But
high at
my
the time?
recollection is that he kind of saw a way to, pay for it, but also make a little back by paying for it slowly.
Yeah.
yeah, well,
But
we'd be in
I do
control.
believe it was based on a low interest rate environment.
Mhm.
I'm not quite sure, but he was threading the needle, and I don't
Yeah.
even remember if his theory played out. I think it played out a little, not as well as he thought, but we did okay with it.
Right.
I don't know about mimicking it in these conditions.
Yeah.
That would be a research project.
One other possibility that would be interesting, because we do have a guarantee here, is to go to VEDA, the Vermont Economic Development Authority, because they are able to lend money based on the state's AAA bond rating,
Right.
which is remarkable. I mean, that's one of the highest state bond ratings in the country.
When did we go back to AAA? Is that
Did it
something-
come off
it went-
AAA?
Yeah, it was because of our pension, because of the pension, it was AA.
It's
Not
still pretty good.
pretty good, but it is not triple.
No, but we might, okay, gotcha. So that would affect our interest rate, but VEDA borrows money from the Vermont Bond Bank and lends it to,
Yeah. That was-
so again, what I don't want to do is create a huge burden on people that already are burdened, but what I do want to do is develop financial relationships that might benefit ORCA
Well,
as
we can do
our,
some research as Mike suggested,
But
maybe
do we
even,
want to get this like before the end of the month?
that won't happen.
so,
But this borrowing from ourselves is almost like taking a loan out against your 401k, sort of same kind of
yeah,
concept,
without
and
the
then paying
penalty.
yourself back.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I think our fallback, so we're expecting interest rates to go down, but not much. I don't think they're gonna try to really drop them. Well, who knows?
I think the FOMC meeting's tomorrow. See what their,
Oh my
what
goodness.
Jerome Powell says.
And how
We'll
much
drop it.
longer?
But we need to decide now though, right? Because you've gotta
So,
get this going.
well, we do
already.
want to purchase it by the end of the year.
Right.
This year.
So I guess, if there's space and whatever is however we decide to finance it, if it needs board approval or if it needs any board action, then that would be the
Mhm.
question. But if it's just about like, we got the approval to buy Harriet,
Mhm.
so now it's just like coming up with how we're gonna finance it isn't necessarily a board action, it's
Right.
just a function of the treasurer. We could, if,
Yeah.
till the end of the month, if that's enough time for you to know which way to go, then that's fine too, and we can talk offline or.
Yeah, I would
about-
think Vita would
Yeah.
work quite that quickly, but maybe, who knows? Who's in
We'd have
charge
to
of
call
Vita?
them.
Who's in charge of
So
Vita?
unfortunately, I used to know the CEO and the CTO and the CFO, and they all
Yeah, right. I
left and
know,
went
I
to a
don't know
more
anybody
conservative model.
anymore.
So
Okay.
I
But we can use.
I think we
borrowing-
just call them
yeah,
and
We can use
say,
borrowing from ourselves as a fallback.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is anyone
Yeah,
else in the
try-
network?
Oh, go ahead, David, say again.
Is anyone else in the network buying is something as expensive and as important as the thing that we're buying?
I don't know. I think they've all bought at different times. I know, like, I think Media Factory has a similar one that, or I would say I don't know if it's Media Factory, but the Vermont Community TV, the van channel, they bought
Yeah.
this version of Harriet a few years back when they first got their equipment. So I think we held on to the very
I was
end.
gonna say, you had it for a lot of years, right?
So some may have bought it beforehand, before she did the end of life, whereas we
Yeah.
like held on until they said, really, you have to choose.
It's gonna die.
That's a
soon.
great question, David. Were you asking and thinking that
Well, I
maybe?
also think that it may be an argument for us to borrow some money from whatever Vita or whatever it is, because we've
Yeah.
hung on so long with equipment that other people had given up on, and we're the last ones. Then I
Yeah.
think that we might want to get the loan.
That's good.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Do you want to make a
What's the
phone
price
call,
tag
or-
again
30.
on the hypercaster?
30 something thousand.
So 30,282. So,
Yeah, I think it was 60 when Mike Doyle did the borrow against self thing.
Oh,
Yeah.
I remember.
There's a
Yeah.
lot more.
A lot of money.
That was, I came in right after that got done.
Well, so do you want to call Vita and see, TJ, if get the conversation going and,
I'm inclined to do it with Jen if
Okay,
you're up for
great.
a call together.
okay,
And,
because if they can't do it fast enough, we won't be able to take advantage of the perks. Yeah, yeah. So it's not gonna happen like this.
What is it? Vita is a
VEDA,
VEDA.
Yeah, it's
okay.
for Vermont Economic Development Authority, so they're sort of a pseudo governmental agency that acts
We
like an
can
angel.
still do Mike Doyle finesse, though, right?
Say again, David?
If we don't
Yeah.
get it, we can still do the Mike Doyle finesse.
That's
Yes,
right.
Yep,
That's our
exactly.
plan B.
So, and I guess we get to decide an interest rate to pay ourselves.
Yeah, right,
back.
exactly. It's our loan.
And it goes into the budget,
Yeah,
you know, so.
okay. All right,
um,
let's move along, folks, because it's getting really late.
8:15.
Very quick, co-directors reports. Thank you very much, CJ.
Hey, I'll also move to accept the financials.
Oh,
Sorry.
forgot that. Want a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, Carlos seconded. Any comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Thank you. Okay, talk fast.
Co-directors,
I was gonna say, it's like, I don't know. So,
go through it.
I think we can go real quick, like, just, we've been doing, so we're starting to do like the holiday events, we try to do,
In more towns than just Montpelier.
in more towns, yes. So
Yeah.
you'll see in the community events, like, we hit up, like, so we're back to our plan of trying to reach out to the other service area or towns. So, outside of that, and I think the sports had ended, so I think that was the only difference, like, we weren't doing any sports, although we are picking it up for next year. We're gonna do some winter sports at the middle school, just because the high schools are taking over. I think outside of that, the finances, I think, where the finances for this year, we are under on compensation and a handful of things. So I think all the expenses are in, except for we have one more payroll to go through for the end of the year. But outside of that, I think, and mileage, so we always have a lot of mileage come through. So we've been,
So finances are under.
so
As
yes,
of
we're
now.
under budget on the majority of things. So if you look through the budget versus actuals, you'll see that we're about like 93, but right now, but we will be, like, we're gonna use up all of the the equipment money, except for the maintenance one, we'll leave that. And we'll have a higher mileage because a lot of people will turn their mileage in at the end of the year. And we have one more payroll.
Have to do mine.
So, but I think for the most part, we're doing well on.
I have a current event I'd like to ask a question about.
Okay.
Sure,
Yeah.
go ahead, Dave.
The current event may take place within the next 3 or 4 days, and I think we should cover it. Somehow, for the first time ever, the basketball team of UVM is the national champion of soccer.
Yes, go
There
Cats.
should be a giant parade of some kind in the Burlington area. It'd be
Yes.
great if ORCA would cover it, because there's a huge outpouring of amazement, because they
Yeah.
were unseated and they've never won a national
Yeah,
championship.
it was on the national news
before.
on Fox tonight. They had the buses with police escorts with the sirens going. There was a bazillion people.
Okay,
on the
well, maybe
campus.
we missed it. I was
No,
hoping
no,
we'd be
no,
there.
this is just coming home, but I'm sure they're gonna do
Okay.
something special.
I think
I
media.
think it's worth it, sending somebody up with a camera and
It's
just filming
huge.
it.
Well, so I think that's in the
Anyway.
media factory service area, so they would, I mean, we can send an email to see if they have plans on covering it, but I would say it's,
Okay.
People were going bonkers. It was incredible.
It's big news. They're gonna cover it, of
We
course.
stayed
they
up,
are.
my son and I stayed up and watched it, went
Oh,
over.
right.
Okay, I
the
just
end,
want to make
right?
sure we were on top of it.
It was right
Right
at the
on.
end, right? It was overtime, right? Oh my God.
Wow.
I wish I had watched it. I've been screaming my head
Oh
off.
my God.
and then the other bit on the finance and the director's report is we got the new lease. So I didn't include it in the board packet, but it's on the Google Drive if you wanted to look through the lease. But in looking through it, there wasn't any major changes or anything to be worried about. I think the rent stayed as we expected, the 3% and the property tax. So I didn't think that there weren't any flags that shot up about the new lease. It's not till March 1st is when it would. So if you wanted to talk about it at the next board meeting, there's one more board meeting, but I would, if I would like to kind of sign it and move it on so that Greenway's not waiting. But if you wanted to take a look and review it for whatever reason,
Is-
definitely it's there. I put in
Is Gateway College our landlord,
Greenway Institute is yes.
or Greenway, excuse me?
Mhm.
That is a
They're our landlord.
fascinating, I don't know if you
Yes.
know much about Greenway, but what a fascinating project they've got going. It is incredible. I am so excited for them and for us.
Yeah, so I'm just thinking, since they're our landlord, we may be on the inside of some Greenway news too.
Well, what they're
Covered.
planning to do is very exciting. It's the way
Yes.
schools should be done.
Exactly.
So, and I think that's,
it.
so, and then, I think we had touched upon the advocacy in earlier parts of the meeting about we've got the 1.35 million ask in the upcoming budget, and we'll be reaching out to the legislators to see if they are supportive, or to find out if they aren't, or, but that's what the advocacy group is working on. So I think that's it on
That's
the,
great. What I know we're really running out of time. The Gifford meetings, what is that about the future of the Gifford Hospital?
yes.
Good God, what are they doing?
Oh, there was a recommendation to shut it
Yeah,
down.
very true.
Really?
So they're getting public input about it and stuff, so we covered.
Yeah, they've got a good restaurant.
In the,
You go there, for food.
Can-
Huh.
yeah.
We can talk about this later. Their center, the food is incredible. It was
The what?
incredible. The birthing center. the
Oh,
food
yes,
facility.
no, it's
I
a
would,
great
can-
and
house.
I
we can
was
move
born
on.
there.
Were you really?
Yep.
Well,
Yeah.
right
Let the
away.
record
So
show.
good.
Okay, so moving on, we've already talked about going to jam, so we don't have to do that.
Mm.
The Bill Doyle Award, Jen's group is taking that. And the art walk, we're not doing it.
So we reached out, it's a $35 fee to participate, and we just wanted to see if that's what we wanted to do to,
Where are we?
We're on
We have-
We're at
nine,
business?
old business. First page of.
So we don't have to
the-
approve the director's report, right?
oh,
Bill Doyle's
we have
award and
to-
the art walk.
We have
We
to
were-
approve the director's report.
Oh, can we have approval of the, I forget doing that. Do we have the approval of director's report?
I
And
move the approval of the director's
Moved,
report.
CJ moved and Carlos seconded. I saw
Yes,
that
I
hand
did.
go up. Thank you.
I second.
Any further comments about the director's report? Good job. You guys worked so hard, honest to God. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Nope, good job.
All right, so we have some, so going back to the old business, the outreach to Jan Spring, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
and we're
Ken
going
talked
down
about
there
that.
in a couple of weeks,
Right.
Outreach to
so is that in
No.
January you guys are going?
January.
So it's
We're
not quite
going in
spring, so it's still winter,
Yeah.
Yeah,
outreach. to-
Yeah, that's-
January.
January.
And what is jam again?
Junction Arts Media
Ah, okay, gotcha. So,
Winter.
and off the record, Jen, with the 64,000 coming in and the new check for 87 and the amount in the savings, do you want to shift more in and see if we can get it to yield another 5,000?
That's what I was gonna see if,
Okay.
and find out from you, so
Yeah.
to see if that's makes sense, but then I didn't know where the Harriet money, like if, like, do we leave some because we're gonna be paying out Harriet, or, so that's why I was like, oh, but
Yeah.
we could talk about it
And then
afterwards.
Bill, we have B,
Okay.
Bill Doyle
Yeah,
Award.
Bill Doyle,
So what is the
Bill's-
status of that?
Oops. This-
I wrote something up, but I gave it to Jen. It's in her hands now, her committee.
The
I think
outreach.
Bill's birthday is May, I forget, May 8th, something, and I thought maybe that would be a good day to have this all wrapped up by and awards out and use that as our,
Oh, yeah,
as
have
our
the
day.
reward ceremony be
Yeah.
his birthday.
Yeah, so,
So our annual meeting, so I did want to ask about, like, for the Bill Doyle Award, I think one of the questions that we asked was, is it a one-time, is it annual? And
I hope it's annual.
then I guess like that amount, so it's, and then we were also like, we wanted to make sure, because like the John Block, we did the studio. And so, because we've decided not to do an award or like do any scholarship, and we also wanted to see if, like, do we want to do a scholarship or just an award? And then the age of your folks of 18 through 30.
I just made that
I
up.
was gonna say, what
Because-
part of this
Well-
is like, do we want to hold firm and say this is definitely a part of the award
The
versus like
reason
what
is we
can
were
be?
focused on students,
Mhm.
kids, and I looked up on internet about what's the age for college kids. And they said 18 to, and advanced awards are up to about 30, so I decided, but you guys can do anything you want with that. But we were focused on children, not children, young people.
I think
Young
we should be
adults.
looking for any age. There are very few awards that
Right.
are available for older people and a
Oh,
lot
that's
of
fine.
innovation.
Yeah, I don't know, we
So-
just focused on, we were saying young people, so.
Mm.
So the award, we've received a proposal and we expect to execute this, right, to have it done at our annual meeting, correct?
We're hoping, yes.
We're hoping.
So it's currently in the outreach circle to review, and as part of the outreach circle representative, I just wanted to see what pieces were like a definite, we want this part of the award, so that it's like, you know, one time versus annual. So if it's something that's annual, do we always have to figure out, like, to make sure that there's money in the
Right.
budget for it? And do we want to, and then if it was an award versus a scholarship, do we want
Yeah,
to?
I think the
Yeah.
scholarship is too complicated, just give them a check.
And-
That's my point, and I would think that we would want to do it annually. We can maybe lower that, we approved 2,000, but maybe we could make it 1,000 and make that annual. That's still a pretty nice check to get. would buy some kind of equipment for somebody.
Right.
And then I guess the other bit would be, and so I was gonna try to put together maybe a matrix for the rubric for scoring.
Yep.
And then we could see which pieces were like, okay, that's too hard to try to capture, and we
Well,
can make
and
the
if
adjustment.
you guys don't want to focus it on a certain age, which I would like it to, I know there's somebody I know that I would, like, well, I don't think any of us can put in a name, but I have somebody in mind and she's older than 30.
Okay,
Right.
You know who I
Yeah,
am.
I know.
But I can't put it, I'll have to find somebody else to do it.
so it is in the works, and we'll try to have the outreach circle meet in the January outreach circle, do that so that we could bring something, I'm hoping to bring a rubric to the board to review.
So
At the
without
next
age
meeting.
limitation,
No age limitation
Well,
is my
I
understanding.
think your circle's gotta talk about that.
well, I think, I'm just capturing this here.
Yeah.
My 2 cents on this is that does not provide equity for younger people who could. So.
Right. Well,
just be aware
our
of that.
last
Younger
discussion
people
was
will
all about
still
young people,
apply
so
for it.
Right, but that doesn't mean, but
here's
you
different
know,
to
if there's much older people, we expect.
That's
in
what
terms
I
of
wrote up
equity,
for
in terms
this.
of the equity, I think, I don't know. But
So-
that's that group.
This may just be aviation, but there are a zillion aviation scholarships available for young people. But I went back to these guys and I was like, here's the numbers. If you really want to fix the problem,
Can you
go
break
after
it,
the
break it
women.
up, can you break it up into 2?
I don't know, but I mean,
Could be a
just-
tie.
we were saying that,
No.
that Bill, Bill Doyle?
Bill Doyle.
No, who'd I have Doyle? What's Mike Doyle? Mike Doyle said, when I had lunch with him about this,
Hmm.
he said Bill Doyle was very focused on young people.
Yeah.
And especially people that were using the
Hmm.
media to influence their peers and others. So when we were talking last time, we were focused on young,
yeah,
but
but we have
I
the,
don't care.
yeah.
So
but if
that's
you
why I
look at what
put the
we're
young
already
in there,
doing,
18 to 30.
Yeah,
The age
No,
is very
it's called-
specific, yeah, 18 to 30.
Well, but I researched that
Okay.
about
Okay.
college and
Generally.
how old kids are.
the thing that, if you want to see the rug pulled out from under people in the coming administration, I will bet that they're going to be pulling the rug out from under older people, not younger people. So that's another reason that I'm inclined to keep the focus on anybody who's benefiting the community through media should be
Yeah,
supported.
let's let the circle full of it and come back and we can vote.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I don't care.
Mm.
I was looking, I did some research on what others have looked like. They have,
Yeah.
Yeah, just give
templates,
an
so I
idea.
copied it.
Anyways, it's funny though, because Bill was such an inspiration about what you can do even as you're getting older. And so,
Okay,
Will do.
So,
I have it.
okay,
Okay, so that's Bill Doyle. The art walk, what did we do? It was $35. I think we didn't know that probably somebody was gonna come up here or not.
so I was gonna say, so we didn't make it for this one, but I didn't know if we were all thinking it was free, but I just wanted to, it does cost $35. Is
Yeah, I thought it
that,
was free.
okay to spend to be part of the art walk?
Well, if we want to, I don't think 35 is a.
I'd say
big deal.
yes.
And next year, we have Sterling's Peebles has offered to bring her collection up here because she was in Art Walk last year. And she offered to bring it up here, maybe on a permanent basis.
Oh, really?
Since some people haven't gotten pictures for the walls, Sterling,
I had the,
Well, the point about the art walk thing is that you usually, we would make an agreement with an artist.
right,
They put their artwork up, and it's the idea is that they would then be able to display, and you can
Right.
sell pieces
hmm.
at the art
yeah, that's
walk.
what Sterling would like to do.
Okay, okay.
And
Well,
because
one-
Sterling worked here, so I thought that was a perfect.
Another thing that I thought about after we had talked about this is like, why don't, and I don't remember if I said this in the last meeting or if I thought of it after then, so if I'm sorry if I've said this with that meeting, is what if we had an event that featured media makers here? Like
Nice.
a looping, like maybe one local Montpelier-based filmmaker. We could do one on, there are like 3 that I know, personally know, in my neighborhood. There's Carlos's students, There's the Make Media Camp.
Yeah.
Kids, we could, like, each month, we have like a different, and they aren't mutually exclusive. It could be the artwork, and then in here, we set up a screen
Nice.
like we did for some film screening that we did recently, and just have it play.
Yeah.
Like you're saying, you brought people from these business owners, they just visiting here and talking to you, they're like, oh my goodness, I didn't know.
Yeah,
everything
they
was so-"
were loving it. They're so excited to get us to release this stuff.
And so there'd be $35 a month for being listed in the brochure. And then whatever agreement we come to with the artist, which I think most media makers would just be like, whatever, just play my thing on a loop, or we do it at one time, or whatever you want to do. And then there would be, if we want to have like any other entertainment like food.
Because I was gonna say, we have the big TV in the next room that we used
the
to,
wall.
on the wall, that we used to use to show the channel and stuff, so we could use that also to loop and have it play. And then I think one of the things where, if we're trying to get people, like, we talked about having a TV face outside in the window and face out, and to have things playing on there so that we can have something like, I feel like it's like old New York City style of like seeing the TV playing stuff, but so that would be always, like, we had talked about, like, do we maybe have a TV over in the window and just playing our stuff so that people walking by could see something and be like, and
That's a
watch
great
it from
idea.
outside?
Nice.
I mean, I think that whatever, we should have a screening here.
Yeah, but I
So
love
people
being
have to
outside.
walk into the studio
Right.
and be in here.
Because that
Like
was
that
fun
one
walking in the studio we went to visit.
No, not that. God,
Huge.
I would never let anything I worked on touch that screen. No, a real screen.
Huge.
Oh,
Yeah,
like a
an actual
movie
screen, a projector. Yeah, like we had one for a screen here recently for
Lucas?
Jesse's
Oh,
film.
okay.
Yeah.
The Huffman. So was that screen okay? Is that the one you were thinking?
Yeah, it
Okay,
wouldn't have to
'cause-
be any bigger than that.
Oh.
It's like just a white screen.
okay, because we do have the white screen for like the projector. I mean, it's not,
So is
It's
that
not
the
so-
outreach committee? Are you with us? So I was just thinking who could put this together for an idea. Want to
Well, I
write
love the
something up?
idea of it playing outside in a window, just because I'm old fashioned.
Yeah.
so in terms of the art walk, so we're okay with the $35 for the art walk.
It's just one time, right?
Yeah, it's per art walk. And so,
Yeah, one time a year.
No,
Or
no,
four
Art Walk
times?
is
Oh.
not monthly, but not, it's
It's
weird.
like,
like,
It's regularly.
yeah.
There's some months that they
Oh,
take
so
off.
it'll be 35 times 5 or
Yeah, I
something.
think so, yeah.
Let's do
Okay.
this one and see how it goes.
Okay.
Yeah,
So couldn't we have one of the kids that has already made a short documentary be there and have his film or her film on the big screen so that people that came in saw the studio, saw the kid, saw the
Nice.
movie as it was going on, and then got out of there and another group came later.
nice. Yeah, you've got some,
If we
The
get them
event
to
could be
commit.
planned. I think that it would be nice to have, I think that one thing that would be really good is to pair maybe a novice and then like someone who has more draw, who is known so that they're actual professionals, so there could be an intermingling. Because if you have just sort of like a kid, you would get that kid's friends and then they would go, and then that would be it. Probably that would be my fear. It's like maybe there's like a couple things that could play. That's why we say maybe on a loop, so then it's not like the thing starts and it ends and then it like it
Just keeps going.
evacuates.
Mhm.
well, can we get somebody to work on that, to map it out?
so I'll let Sean know, and maybe Sean
Okay,
can,
Sean
because
can
he'll
do it.
know also all the community producers that might be available if they have some
That'd be fun.
media. And I know he's been working with a couple students over at the high school, so if they're almost ready to like do a screening or something,
Great.
and he did
Well,
the
yeah,
crowd,
and Sean has a really good film.
yes.
Mhm.
That if he would be
Yeah,
interested in
sounds
playing,
good.
he's definitely one I was thinking about. Sean and Sarah's film, The Thaw, is amazing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would like someone at that level and that, so it's professional looking. So it might, what I would like to see is for people to see that they're professionals also. And they could help one another and generate more
Nice.
community-based, centered around ORCA, not just
That's why I want a
community producer
commercial.
level work.
I want an ORCA commercial to play on the loop,
You
right?
have to pay for that commercial.
No, I mean, we could make it.
The
You guys-
PSA. Do we qualify? All right, let's move along. So you're gonna get us something in writing and
when is the next one? Just to, is the next one January? You said January.
I don't think it's that soon, so,
I have to
I'll-
look back. Python said something in that email that, well, I think
She's
you were
not
on.
changing.
Mhm.
Go back and forth.
She got married. Cool.
Oh, wow.
So last item is new business. Anybody have new business they want to bring forward?
I think we kind of buried it in the meeting.
I think we did.
Yeah. Do we have to make a date for
A new date for the
Yes.
next meeting?
it's like, last time we forgot.
Do we have to
Oh, yeah, I wondered. if I
make a
wasn't on
meeting,
my-
a date for the annual meeting? Is where we're moving that till
Isn't it
May?
a standard?
always in May,
meeting, the
so I
second
think we have
something
some
of every
time.
month?
Okay. I'm sorry.
Don't we do a standard second something of every month, or do we just?
It's generally the fourth Tuesday,
Fourth Tuesday.
so that would be the 21st.
Okay, of January.
I'm sorry, oops, sorry. 1, 2, 3, the 25th of February.
Okay. So, any further comments from
Is that-
anybody? It's a good meeting.
When is the February break for the kids or the schools?
That week.
That week, so I was gonna say, I think February oftentimes, like, do you want to shift it to the week before because everyone's on break?
The one we just picked on January.
Yeah, the
25th?
Or no, February
Oh,
25th.
February.
Yeah, I'm not gonna be around.
Yes.
I don't know what I'm doing. Sure, is it easier in case anybody's on vacation to Florida or somewhere that we could hate them?
I could do the 18th.
Was the
That's
18th
open to me.
okay?
That's good. February 18th, done.
Does that work for everybody in virtual land?
I think it's just Dave.
Oh,
We lost my-
Michael. I didn't
Last Mike, yeah.
even
So,
realize.
I can, if the 20 or the 18th of February sounds good, I can reach out to the ones who didn't make it, just
Yeah,
to
that's-
let them know also.
Okay, so no other comments or thoughts? We will adjourn the meeting.
Okay.
Thank you all.
So adjourned.